Jason Palmer, one of the hosts of The Intelligence, The Economist's daily current affairs podcast. The Economist's award-winning shows make sense of what matters, from our special series on China's president to our weekly podcasts on business, technology, and American politics. Our journalists provide fair, in-depth reporting on the events shaping the world. To get the annual plan for less than $2.50 per month, search for Economist Podcasts Plus to start listening today.
What does an 18-year veteran of the tech industry and a 20-year veteran of the military have in common? More than you might think. Welcome, everyone, to the Second Act podcast, leveling up your life's journey. Good morning, John.
Hey, what's going on, Michael? How you doing, sir?
I am doing well for Tuesday, Halloween.
Yes.
October 31st today.
You got your costume picked out?
Yeah, my costume's that of a dad today.
Okay.
So, yeah, we haven't graduated to the family costume situation yet. I know a lot of families that do that, but we opted out for that this year. How about you?
My wife and I have never dressed up in, in costumes that are in sync. So we are going as, the painter, my mind just escaped me. She is a canvas, and I am going as the painter who painted, the beautiful trees and the lovely mountains. And what's his name? Why did we hit record?
Bob, is it
Bob Ross? Thank you.
Bob Ross. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I am Bob Ross. I've got the wig. I've got everything we need. She's my canvas, and as we're going as. And then my kids are, my son is on a Back to the Future kick, so he's going as Marty from Back to the Future 1.
Okay.
And my youngest son is going as a caveman. So.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a little chilly. It snowed here over the weekend. I don't know about you up there in Denver, but we got a couple inches here, so pretty exciting, but now it's a mess.
We had 6 or 8 inches here, and it started to melt yesterday, and hopefully it's going to melt some more today so that all of these amazing decorations that my son put out there everyone can appreciate. I mean, a lot of hard work went into the outdoor decoration design this year, and it looks kind of spooky, like the Haunted Mansion outside. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Nice. Well, cool, man. I'm excited. To see some pictures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Should we kick this off?
Let's do it. So welcome back, everybody. We are here now on episode 9. In our last episode, we took a step forward, introducing our first guest, Jeremy Ballenger, who's also our producer. He's also worked with some big names in showbiz, and he gave us a window into his childhood, what motivates him, how he came to be the person he is today. And
he's a stud, too.
He is super awesome.
That was a fun interview for me to sit in on and listen to, and let him open up about his journey in life, man. Great.
Absolutely.
Great story.
Yeah. And you can tell how polished, I mean, he's an experienced podcaster, unlike us, John. So you can tell he's ready to go on these things.
That silky smooth voice that he had.
But it never ceases to amaze me what people have gone through. And until you sort of really build that connection and get to know people, understand how they've persevered in life, and how we all are really a reflection of the summation of our life experiences. So you and I have talked surface level about who we are and why we are pursuing second acts in our lives.
Yeah.
But we have not gone deep with the audience about who we are as a person, like getting to know us a little more.
Okay.
And I've gotten some feedback from people like, hey, I heard this in this episode, or, oh, that sounded really interesting. Can you guys dive a little bit deeper into that thing? And I think it's important for the audience to understand more about who we are, what has shaped us and our thinking, how you and I are similar, and then maybe how we're different in some ways.
Sure.
Because, we come from different backgrounds. We have different audiences.
Absolutely.
20 years in the military, 18 years in tech. We're going to have different cohorts of people that we've worked with and built friendships with. And some people are like, well, that's the strangest marriage ever. Military and tech, Marine versus a Miami city kid. And it's like, I think it just makes the conversation more interesting. So in this episode, we're going to be asking each other some questions. I think you're going to start, John. If we run out of time, we'll probably punt your questions from me into the next episode. But hopefully we're providing some candid feedback and giving people a window into us as individuals.
Yeah, man. Let's do it. Let's get into it.
All right. Number one question. I wrote these down just based on some feedback. And even I know you and I have shared offline some things about each other. So I know a little bit more about you than the audience does, but it's always good to revisit and maybe even go a little bit deeper than what we've shared with each other before.
Sure.
You've mentioned that you grew up in Oklahoma. So tell us briefly about your childhood growing up, some of the life events that shaped who you are and how faith has played such an important role in your life from an early age.
Yeah. Well, Michael, first of all, it's an honor to be here with you. We do have different backgrounds and different experiences, and it's really cool to hear those differences play out. And not only are they differences, but they're also supporting differences. And so, we have these different stories, but it's interesting to see how they're kind of intertwining, like two cogs meshing up and making something greater out of it. So I just want to get that plug in there before I start. But yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma, 22 years, born and raised there, thought that I was going to live there my entire life, went to a small Christian school, for, kindergarten through 12th grade, graduated, went to Oral Roberts University, who's also a little Christian school there in Tulsa, well known for baseball, basketball, but graduated from Oklahoma or from Oral Roberts University and decided to move away through a series of events. But I'll back up. So phenomenal childhood. I'm definitely blessed. When I was growing up, my parents got divorced, but my dad got remarried, and my mother, the lady that came in and took over as my mother and adopted me, did a phenomenal job. She definitely stepped in, and helped raise me into the person I am today. My dad, while he was single, had this extraordinary pressure of raising a child while he was also full-time running the Tulsa airport. And so just a real testament to his fortitude and his grit to raise a little boy, and do it on his own while he's navigating the pressures of life. So I definitely feel blessed to have that story and have that, testimony of, now a whole family, and then being able to have that restored. But when I was in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, I thought that was just where I was going to be. I loved it. I loved the friends I had, the family, the church, the experiences I had going to the lake in the summer, and that shaped a lot of my thinking. And I thought that when I graduated from college, I was going to stay there. In fact, I got two job offers as a junior at Oral Roberts. And I thought, man, this is great. I'm going to graduate. I get to have a job. I get to stay here. Maybe one day I'll grow up and move to a bigger city like Dallas or something and really make something of myself. But then the more I started thinking about it, I thought, man, here I am, 21, 22 years old. I've got a job offer. I'm going to go work, not that there's anything wrong with, working, at a sedentary job, but doing something. And it felt like my life was almost too planned out. And something was planted in me. And a friend of mine and myself, we walked to the recruiter's office, military recruiter's office, and man, something struck a chord, and I was like, this feels right. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I've had family members that served in the military as well, and you kind of feel like, oh, this is my time. This is what I need to do. And I joined, and then a year later, I signed the dotted line, and a year later, I graduated from college. World had changed significantly then. If I signed the dotted line in 2001, graduated 2002, so obviously September 11th had happened in between there. But graduated.
So you signed before 9/11?
Yeah, a month before. Yeah, with the commitment that I was going to do this. So I graduated from college, and 2 months later, I was in Quantico, Virginia, going to officer candidate school, which is the officer boot camp in the Marine Corps. And 10 weeks later, I was a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, going to what was called the basic school that all Marines go to, and then to flight school after that. So, really through that narrative, have blessed to have a loving family, to have friends, and the environment that I grew up in that really shaped and developed the character that I had going into the military that has now sustained me through 20 years of that first career. So just a blessed life, if I can say so.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it sounds like faith has played an important role throughout every stage of your life.
Yeah.
From early childhood, went to a Christian school, went to a Christian university.
Yep.
Are there specific life events that strengthened your faith that you want to share, or?
Yeah. They are significant. And they're significant, like everybody's story has significant events, but the summation of the significant events that have challenged me and have made me come out stronger. Just the divorce. My wife and I both come from divorced families, and we have resolved to end that within our family, and that's really strengthened our marriage. When I was a sophomore in college, so this is 1999, my birth mother actually committed suicide. Subsequently, my aunt and my grandfather on my mother's side also committed suicide. Those are significant events in that, a lot of people say that suicide is in the blood, and it will come back to haunt you. And I am here to say that even though those life events have occurred, that I will break that narrative. It will not affect me. And it's not like it's not a challenge. It's just not going to define my life. And then when I was in the Marine Corps, my wife and I were stationed in Hawaii. We had already had one child, and our second child, Brooklyn, our daughter, was born, and 86 days later, she passed away after spending all 86 days in the NICU. So another event that really challenged my wife and I in our marriage, but we were able to come out stronger, both in our communication and in our faith, and really now be hopefully individuals and a family that can speak into other people's lives who are going through the same situation or similar situations, and encourage them that even though we may not know the outcome or not have control of the outcome, there are still ways that we can come out of it better than we were before. So, it's it really, again, I look back at how God's blessed my marriage and my life, and allowed me to come out of those situations stronger. So,
wow.
Yeah, faith has definitely played a role and has definitely been strengthened through some of those experiences.
Yeah, and those are some significant experiences.
Yeah.
Dealing with a family history of mental health issues, that sort of impacted you as a child, life events with your daughter, and just historically the family dynamics, having your faith to lean on and lean into in times of need.
Yeah.
That community is it's a powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's see if we can get to something a little bit lighter. We got into something heavy out of the gate, but thank you. No, thank you for sharing that, John. I know there's people in the audience that can certainly relate, understand. Maybe they've been impacted themselves by some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's good to put that out there and just let people know that they're not alone.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned, I think it was not the episode with Jeremy, but in the episode prior to that, you had gone to an event called the Kingdom event, which is also oriented around faith, and then having 5 men in your life. And I know you've also mentioned your wife and probably other women who have also been important figures in your life. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That sounds funny. My wife is the most important woman in my life. But
sorry,
yes.
If I phrased that in a way that was totally by accident.
If she actually listens to this episode, she is the most important woman in my life.
Of course.
Women, to include my mother and my mother-in-law and my grandmother. Yes, those other women have played significant portions of my life. So the 5 men in my life, I call them the 5 pillars. So I just spoke about my dad and really his my testimony with him being persistent and keeping me and raising me as a single father. But, there's a point in life where a man has to branch off from the family and he wants to go his own way. He really wants to stretch his own boundaries and figure out who he is. Mm-hmm. Well, that period of my life was when I was at Oral Roberts University. Even though I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was 8 miles away from the house that I grew up in and was living on campus and making probably not the best decisions because I was out of the shelter that I had grown up in. So here I am, freshman, sophomore year, starting to make these decisions. I've got a couple jobs. I'm working hard. I'm going to school. I'm playing a ton of sports and doing this, having this full college experience. And I had these men that were slowly creeping into my life, whether it was intentional or not. I believe that they were, ordained by God to be in my life to help give me direction when I didn't really want to listen to the direction that my father was giving me or to the direction that he had instilled in me and the character that he had, solidified in my life. These 5 men really stepped up in these integral roles to really speak into my life and say, John, listen, we see what you're doing and you've got more potential than that. Or what are you doing? Why are you, succumbing to the easy road? Why aren't you doing things that challenge you more? And it wasn't that it was in a fatherly figure, or it wasn't that it was like a father stepping in. It was still a good advice like a father would give, but because it was outside that role, it seemed to just resonate differently. And so these 5 men, one was my pastor at the time. 3 of the men came from one of the jobs that I'd worked at for 2 years, a logistical company in Tulsa called Trinity Chemical. And then another one was just a father figure that was in the church. And so these 5 men, I cherish the relationship that I have with them and really, try to honor them whenever I get a chance. Yeah. But they were the ones that kind of corralled me and brought me along and said, hey, we just think that you have more potential. You have greater things in your life than you're aiming for right now. And so, because those 5 men have spoken into my life the way they have, I've tried to dedicate my life, now that I'm at the same place they were, I've tried to dedicate my time to finding people like myself, 25 years ago and help bring them along by just encouraging them, by just seeing things outside of their perspective or outside of, what they're focused on, and saying, hey, did you ever consider this? Or have you thought about going about things this way? Or maybe you need to step up and be the man for your family that I think you have the potential to be. So just really now, not trying to, I guess, pay it forward, but pay it back.
Yeah.
Pay back the intentionality that these 5 men put into my life.
Yeah, it's funny. Your parent, your spouse, your sort of inner circle provides you advice and input throughout your life, but for some reason, human nature needs an objective third party to also provide either supporting information to what you've heard from your inner circle, or information that contradicts that. Maybe you've been born into some unfortunate circumstances, and you're looking for those guiding lights outside of that bad circumstance to help you in your journey. And when you think about the life journey in general, it's fascinating how you're really going through life on a razor's edge between good decisions and bad decisions, and how easy. And we've talked about temptation really from a professional context, like getting off track from what either your calling is or what you've wanted to commit to doing personally for the second act of your career, but also temptation and other bad decisions that seem so easy to make at times and take you off track. And a lot of people, probably most people, do make bad decisions from time to time, and they're able to recover from that detour and make the right decisions going forward. But it's I can certainly relate with your story, and I'm sure many of the audience can as well.
Yeah, you're right. Razor's edge is a great descriptor. I look back at the things that I had done throughout my life, and how close I was to just that one step further between getting off scot-free and being caught, or making it out alive and not, and these decisions that you make, man, it's such a great example of just how life works. And you call it grace, you can call it God's provision, you can call it luck, you can call it these different things, but we all have. If you've made it to where I am, 43 years old, about to turn 44, and look back, you're like, man, I can count on, 2 hands, or more than that, how many times I've been able to walk away from something and it turn out for the better.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild to look back and think about those moments.
It is.
And it just, when you do, it, again, coming back to the second act, pause, reflect, be grateful, and so thankful for sort of getting to this point 100%. in life.
Yeah. And I'll just impart one more thing. There's a story in the Bible, for anybody that's not familiar. There's 10 lepers that are walking down this street. Leprosy at the time was like a life-ending disease. I mean, your fingers fall off, your skin's falling off until you die. 10 lepers are walking down the street, and Jesus is walking the other direction. They see him, and basically Jesus heals all 10 of them. He's like, "You're healed. Go your way. You have shown that you have faith." And they turn around and they're so happy because they see a complete change in their life. Right? Immediately, it's the complete change in their skin, but they also know that translates to how their life is going to change significantly from being outcasts to being, contributing members of society. So these 10 members turn around, they start running home to go show their friends and family, and one stops, and he pauses, and he turns around, and then he comes back, and he thanks Jesus for healing him. And Jesus acknowledges there's 9 other men that are walking the other direction that didn't come back and thank me, but you're the one that did. And that story has really struck a chord with me. And I impart that story to tell other people that if there are people in your life, significant figures in your life that have stepped out of their way to do something for you, it's never too late to go back and thank them. It's never too much to thank them again. I share that with in context with these 5 men, because every time I see these men, I thank them for what they did 25 years ago. And I tell them they planted a seed 25 years ago that came to result in where I am today. In fact, one of my greatest honors was to have all 5 of those men standing in front of the Marine One helicopter with me when I flew to Tulsa to support one of the presidents on his trips. And we all 5, the 5 of them and myself, we got a picture together. And it's one of the most important and significant pictures for my life, because it's those 5 men that spoke into me that got me to where I am today. So take the time to go back and thank somebody, significant other, mother, father, stepfather, whoever.
Friend.
That's stepped into your life, that's given you wisdom, that's helped you significantly in your course of life. Thank them, because it means more than you think it does.
All right. Well, you brought up flying for the president, and so that's a great segue into just revisiting your military past for a second, and dive into a couple of questions that the audience might be wondering, given 20 years in the Marine Corps and flying the president of the United States as your last role there. So why after 20 years did you decide to leave? Why not go another 5, 10, 20 years and make it to, 3-star general or 4-star general? What's the, I know it's easier said than done, but
I appreciate the credit you're giving me. That was probably not possible, but, so 20 years. It's interesting to look back. When I first joined, the initial commitment when you signed up to be a pilot, signed the aviation contract, was 8 years. And at the time I was like, geez, that's a long time. I mean, 8 years, I was 21 years old. I mean, that's a third of my life that I'm committing to. It's a big commitment. And I thought, I'm going to get in, I'm going to, go through, boot camp and the basic school and become a Marine and become a Marine aviator and maybe get a couple tours under my belt. And then I'm out. I want to do something else. And part of that was because of the experience I had in my life, which was raised in one place, lived there my whole life, and really enjoyed it. So I thought to myself, I'm going to do that same thing for my wife and kids, and get out of the Marine Corps and settle down somewhere and start my life. Almost like it's the end of a chapter and it's done. And I can't have, 2 chapters intertwine with each other. But as I started going, I fell in love with the job. I fell in love with the mission. Obviously huge honor to be called a Marine, wear the uniform, just a significant part of my life. But, I started dating now my wife, and then we got married, and then we had our first child, and I was still really enjoying doing the things that was required of me and deploying. And it worked out when I deployed that my wife and I kept a great relationship coming back. So we just continued to commit to staying in longer and longer. Yeah. But as you go, you see the end of the tunnel. And whether that's at 15, 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, you start recognizing when it's just time. And when I joined this squadron, my last tour was with the presidential squadron, I told my wife, this will be the last thing that I do, for a couple reasons. One, I'd already been in for 15 years. And fortunately, at 20 years, I was still under the old structure, but at 20 years, you could retire with benefits. So
Okay.
20 years was kind of a natural mark, but I also got my dream job right there at the end, and that was going to take me to 20 years. I also had, 2 boys. We had lost our daughter, but we had a third child, and they were starting to get a little older and recognize when I was gone on deployments or gone on trips, or just away for a significant amount of time. And 9 months is a long time to be gone when you've got a newborn. When you leave and he can barely hold his head up, laying on the bed, and you come back home and he's almost walking to you. That's a significant amount of time that you're gone, and those milestones that you miss out on. But I really felt like this last set of orders was my Super Bowl, and then I was winning the Super Bowl, and I wanted to go out ahead. I know that I felt like the jobs that were after that were still significant, but they wouldn't hold the same place in my heart that this last job did. And so we just had, wife and I, and even my boys, we had long conversations about what life would look like afterwards and what they wanted to achieve in the next chapter, and what my wife wanted to achieve and where we wanted to do those things. And it just became inevitable that I had run that race. I had run as strong as I could and felt like I was finishing well. Let's just get out and do something new as a family this time. Not me dragging my family all around the country for my dream, but let's create dreams together as a family. And that's what ultimately allowed us to retire, move to Colorado Springs, and start the second act.
Yeah, I feel bad when I leave Molly home with the dog and my son for a few days to a week, let alone 6 to 9 months. So do you have to, in the military, I don't know if you can speak for everyone, but for yourself, do you have to compartmentalize what's going on to allow you to be focused on your job, but and then sort of shift or help us non-military folks get into the mind of how you're able to, with yourself being such a family man and having so much love for your family and your faith, how can you separate in that moment to go do your job for extended periods of time and then come back and sort of be present for the family?
Yeah, the first couple deployments when it was just my wife and I, or, the first deployment was just me, we were dating. The second deployment was my wife and I. Third deployment was with one child, and the fourth deployment was with both of my boys. The first two are very different. You kind of just live two separate lives. I'm off in Iraq or on a ship for 9 months doing my thing, and you write home, and it just feels very fragmented. She's doing her thing, I'm doing my thing, and we know that we're ultimately going to get back together and rejoin those stories. But for 9 months, you just kind of put things on hold. As far as the relationship goes, and you still try to make gains, but you're doing your thing. You're focused on the day to day, but you know that life's away. Your significant other is doing her own thing, and she just has to kind of reshift her mindset to get through those 9 months. As you have kids, though, what I tried to do is be very intentional. So, Skype was just evolving when my youngest son was around. So we tried to make time where I could see him and he could see my face and really connect with me, even though he might not know who I am or understand what's going on. At least there's that connection on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And then my fourth deployment, I went as far as to be intentional to write a letter to them every single week. So a letter to both of them at different ages and different content in the letter, but to say, hey, Daddy loves you. I'm here. This is what I'm thinking about today. This is what I want to do when I get back. I would love to read these books with you, and kind of set future goals together. And,
nice.
First couple I actually just gave to my wife before I left, because I knew that there was going to be a transit time for me to get over to Afghanistan. So she had, the first 7 or 8 weeks of letters that she would put in the mailbox and the boys could find and, open up, and there'd be pictures and stickers and little things like that. And I think that really made the difference. Maybe not even for them, but for me, to really keep our lives continuing in a meaningful way. So I really appreciate her, helping me do that and play a part. But yeah, it does take significant effort if you want those relationships to keep, keep blossoming.
That's definitely a window into a world that I'm very unfamiliar with. My dad was in the Air Force, but he served the 4 years and then left. My grandfather was in the Navy, also I think 4 years and left. So you 20 years going on these long deployments. It's a world I'll probably never know and quite understand the way that you do it.
Sure.
Maybe a spouse has some experience with it, coming from a military family. I don't know if your wife did or not, or if this is her first having you into that.
First stint.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it sounds tough, but it sounds like you came up with a recipe that worked for you and your family, and those letters and those commitments in those letters I bet those are pretty special.
Yeah.
To your kids.
Yeah. They still pull them out every once in a while and say, "Dad, hey, you said 4 years ago when you were deployed we were going to do this, and we never have." And so it's there's fun memories, and it definitely resonates with them, and they've kept a couple that were their favorites. So it's fun to look back and think about or see what you were thinking about back then. So
nice.
Yeah.
All right, I want to be conscious of time here, John. We'll keep going as best we can. I know everyone loves to hear about your experience flying for the president. It's an experience that most people don't get to have. You flew for 2 different presidents.
Sure. Very different presidents.
In that role. Yeah, very different presidents. What is one story from flying one of the presidents that you think the audience would enjoy or find entertaining that you're able to share with them?
Oh man, the one that comes to mind is the one I've got pictured over my shoulder. But one of the most significant flights for me was the first time that I was entrusted to fly the president and make the decisions that went into that flight, and the coordination and the planning, and just be the integral spoke in that process. But I got to fly President Trump up to Mount Rushmore, fly by Mount Rushmore, and then land in front of Mount Rushmore for his celebration of America. They did 2019, July 3rd. Okay. Anyway, we had done a lot of planning. It was a very tight timeline. But one of the things before the president arrived, the military aide said, "Hey, President Trump's really looking forward to flying past Mount Rushmore. Is there any chance that you can get close? I mean, like really close to Mount Rushmore, and just, make it worth his while?" And, there's been pictures of aircraft flying by Mount Rushmore, and they're actually very far away, but they're still very cool and iconic photos. But I thought, you know what, we're gonna do this. So I ran it past my boss, my commanding officer, said, "Hey, this is the distance and spacing that I'd like to fly past Mount Rushmore." He said, "Yeah, that sounds good." So the day of, President Trump's on board, we're flying by, and I'm super nervous, super excited, but I know that he is gonna get a kick out of how close we get. And so the military aide and I had a plan. He was going to be looking away from the window that he's sitting at, and as we get close to Mount Rushmore, the military aide was going to say, "Hey, President, look out your window. You'll see Mount Rushmore." Well, I guess that when we were setting this up, and he told the president, this is after the fact, he told the president, "Hey, if you look out your window, you're going to see Mount Rushmore." President Trump thought he was going to be looking a significant way out the window to see Mount Rushmore. And we were 60 feet away from George Washington's nose. So, I mean, you're literally seeing the pitting from the dynamite blasting and, all the granite there right up in the window. I mean, I think he had to, he was so shocked that he let out a loud exclamation. And it seemed like joy about how close we were flying by. So that story kind of resonates with me, and just one of the fun memories that I have. So
yeah, you can put yourself in a very small circle of people who will ever have that experience. Yeah, both flying the president and then being that close to Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, so a park guide who'd been there for 40 years said he had never seen an aircraft fly as close as we did, and probably will never see it again. So I'll take that record and I'll hold on to it for a while, I think.
That's wild. That's wild. One last question about the military. It seems your identity is tied, at least from the civilian perspective, is tied to your rank and role. I mean, I think that's how you introduce yourself a lot of the time within the military community, at least when you're meeting people for the first time, or someone has done it for you. What advice do you have, or how do you recommend people adjust to civilian life after leaving something that's so well defined for a large part of your career, for their career? And it doesn't just, I'm thinking about it more conceptually, lessons learned in the transition into the second act that you've experienced from military life, but other people who are transitioning from maybe something in their life that has defined them for a long period of time as well.
Yeah, that's great. Great perspective. When you're in uniform, even in just your fatigues or your camouflage uniform, it's interesting because when you walk into a room, people know two things about you. They know your rank, which typically states how long you've been in and what you've been able to achieve, and where they stack up against you, and they know your name. So even if they've never met you and you walk into a room and they see Ballenger, they already know, they can associate, my identity is on my chest, and, obviously Marine is on the other side, but now I'm wearing Lieutenant Colonel rank. They know, okay, he's probably been in for 15 to 20 years and he's probably done a couple of these tours, and he's, so your resume kind of sits on you. It's even more pronounced when you go anywhere in your dress uniform. You've got ribbons, you've got shooting badges, you've got your rank, you've got, in the Army, you got name tag. So now you're literally walking into a room and showing people your resume. It shows people every deployment you've been on, every medal that you've achieved, whether that's in a unit or your personal accomplishments. You show your rank, you show how well you shoot the pistol and rifle. You see all these things that allow you to stack up to other people or allow them to stack up to you. And as you get older in the military, it's a great feeling to walk around and know that, you've got some years on some people, and you can tell some stories or potentially pass on, impart some wisdom. But man, I'll tell you what, when you leave the Marine Corps, leave the military, and you go to walk into a coffee shop and you're wearing a flannel and shoes, and jeans, no one knows anything about you unless they've met you before. Or you walk into a job interview and all you got is this piece of paper that's supposed to sum up all the experience that you have. It can feel incredibly disorienting. It can feel incredibly humiliating from the experience you've had before. Yeah. But what I learned is there is no difference in how I get to treat people, whether I've got a uniform on or I'm in civilian clothes walking into an interview. I still get to treat those people the exact same way in either circumstance. And it's up to me to impart how they feel about themselves and the experiences they are proud of to gain that from that interaction. And so it's really taught me more about how I treat other people and how I view other people than than me really caring about how they view me. I feel accomplished. I know that I've achieved some things, but now I get the chance to walk in. The guard is down because nobody's looking at me, stacking me up to them. Yeah. I now get to ask them about themselves, and it's a much more open conversation.
Yeah, it's a really interesting and phenomenal point you bring up, and whether people have had success in their career like you've had in the military, they've had financial success. They say that when you reach certain levels of success, it doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are.
Yeah.
And I just find that a very fascinating distinction, which you just described, and speaks to, I think, the person that you are, John, which I'm proud to call my co-host.
Thanks, man. It takes a little bit of time though, because you want to come out of the military and you want to go get that job and you want to make a significant difference, but then you realize, oh man, that person literally has no idea what I've done, except if they read it on paper or, start asking those questions. And you really get to just open up and figure out who that person is. So it's really cool. It's been a great time, great year being out of the military, experiencing civilian life and transitioning, with my family at my side.
Yeah. I've always thought the resume, a piece of paper that's 1 to 3 pages, is kind of a silly way for someone to represent themselves over a lifetime of experience, both professionally and what their personal characteristics are. I'm surprised it hasn't been disrupted yet. LinkedIn is sort of like the digital resume nowadays, but
sure.
Yeah, it's when you think about it at its very sort of basic level, this piece of paper that's nowadays optimized using artificial intelligence around the job posting that's out there. It's not really who you are. It's just something to sort of get your foot in the door and then, to your point, like open up the discussion and try to build that connection.
Yeah. It is amazing it hasn't been disrupted. That's a great point. As many other things that have been changed in the way that we pursue jobs and go find our next opportunity, that we're still walking around with 20 copies of these resumes, and we hand to somebody and they either put it in a stack of other resumes or they, toss it and never hear from them again. So most of my resumes have gotten tossed, obviously.
I doubt it. I doubt it. All right, let's move into the next question. We've got a couple 2, 3 more. As a personal reflection exercise, you've written your obituary, a rather morbid exercise, but one that forces you to really think about how you want to be remembered by others.
Yeah.
And when we worked together earlier in this year, you had me do that, and it was a very strange experience. But tell us how your thoughts came together on that and how it's influencing your life decisions now.
Yeah. It was a powerful exercise. And we had a little bit of different criteria. The way that we had to write our obituary, we had to write 2 of them. One is if we could write it ourselves, and it was, all the glorious things you normally hear at funerals about people and the way their lives are being shared. The other was if we were to die today and nobody could modify how your actual obituary would sound. So I took a second. I took some time, and I wrote it from my wife's perspective. And I wrote it as if I were to die and she would have the opportunity to warn others about the shortness of life. And I wrote it, the way I wrote it, it was basically how I talked about, I currently talk about my priorities. And my priorities are, I put my faith in Jesus Christ as number 1. Then my love for my wife is number 2. The love for my children as number 3. And those are distinctly separated. And then everything else after that is 4, 5, 6, 7 down the road, down the line. But in the obituary, my wife was reading this to the crowd that had come for my funeral. And she said, John always talks about his priorities and how they are stacked. Unfortunately, things kept creeping up into that priority list and shifting those numbers around. Always kind of pushing and changing what was important at the time. And then it was her warning other men, you never know how long life is. If you have your priorities in order, stick to those priorities and make sure that those priorities remain the priorities, because you're not granted tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a warning, right, to all other men. And it was incredibly profound because now I think about that almost on a daily basis. What is this task that I'm doing, or what is this thing that I'm heading out to do? Where does that stack in my priority list? Is this taking time away from my family? Is this taking time away from my wife? Is this not allowing me to have time in my faith? Or is this, challenging the time that I set away to go to church with my family on a Sunday? Mm-hmm. So those questions come up a lot more often. And it really creates a great baseline, a great foundation for how you want to structure your time in your life. And so, yeah, I encourage everyone to do that. Maybe not have to write it as if you couldn't make changes, but write it in a retrospective way of what you've done in your life and what you want to achieve. And man, are you pursuing that 1% better? Are you trying to make a difference? Are you being influential in the community that you have to make other people's lives better? Or are you just focusing on your own life, trying to make it the best that you can? Great exercise. And I encourage anyone to do it.
So marrying that exercise with now being on your second act in life, how are you defining success in relationship to how you want to be remembered, plus the things that you want to accomplish in your second act?
Well, my second act, like I alluded to before, it's now a journey down the road of life with my family. It's no longer by myself or what I can achieve. And my wife was gracious for 15 years to say, hey, John, you go do what you want, do what you need to do in the Marine Corps, and we're going to pursue that, and we'll be with you. And there's a significant difference between that and now, which is let's go do what we want to do, and we're going to be together. So she was with me before, now we're doing it together. We're doing something together, which, yeah, we can't work the same job. She's a school teacher and I'm pursuing a couple other interests. So we're not like working together, but in a sense, our lives are more combined. They're more joint now than they ever were before, because now we chose where we're going to live together, what we're going to do, what we're going to pursue, and what our priorities are going to be. We chose all those things together. So that really encompasses my second act. And my second act is also more about what I can impart in my community. Those other men that may be a couple steps behind me, my boys, who I definitely want to have men speak into their lives when they don't want to hear from me anymore. And the community that I'm building, so that if I do leave this earth, I'm leaving that for my wife and my boys to step into and have the community that we have built together.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great question.
All right. Any final thoughts you want to share before, I guess we're going to run out of time for me to jump in and get questions in this episode, but that's okay. No, before I take the hot seat in the next episode, anything you want to share, John, before we sign off here?
Well, I alluded to it earlier, Michael. I appreciate what you and I are being able to do together. This is an important part for our communities, for men and women who are on their second act and feeling like they may be on their own. They're not. We are just an extension of that community that I was just talking about, building out with my wife and kids. You and I are doing that for these people that may be doing something new, that may be worried about getting into something that they've never done before, don't have the experience to get into. We are here to say we're doing that exact same thing right now. And we've got the community built, and people are joining every day. And we would love to just have them come along so that we can help together, because what we do together is so much greater than what we can do by ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hot seat indeed, man. You brought some questions for me, so thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. I'm sure Jeremy in the background has as well, and I'm hoping our audience will when this is released. I really appreciate you opening up at least a window into your personal life, John, and sharing some of those specifics with everyone about things they may have been wondering about, things I was wondering about that you haven't already told me. So, yeah, just learned a lot today, and this has been really awesome. And for anybody out there who has an interesting second act story to share, head on over to michaelandjohn.com, submit your info for a review to be a guest on our show, because we would love to hear your personal story, where you want to go in your second act, whatever that may be, whether personal or professional. And we know the audience, they've told us they love hearing the stories, especially those where there's been some life-altering event that has caused them to sort of pivot what they're doing and rethink their strategy about life. So, we have an awesome guest lineup building, and we look forward to connecting with everyone again next week.
Yeah, and I'll just say real quick, if any of this resonates, any of my story or Michael's story next week resonates with you, and do you feel like you need to reach out, we would love to help. We'd love to listen. We'd love to provide some resources. So again, michaelandjohn.com, or you can find Michael Newborn on LinkedIn, or you can find myself, John Ballenger, on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you, hear what you're going through, and then hear also what we can do to help. So
absolutely.
I know that we've touched on a lot of deep topics on today's episode. And if you are contemplating suicide or going through situations that you don't feel like you're in control of, I encourage you to reach out. 988 is the number that you call. The hours are 24/7. The cost is free. Or you can text HOME, that's HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor through the crisis text line, which is a global non-for-profit organization. It's free, it's 24/7, and it's confidential. Reach out and let them know how they can help you.
Thanks, John.
See you next week.
See ya.
The Second Act with Michael and John features Michael Newborn and John Ballenger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act with Michael and John on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.